director of the Centre de Formation Médicale de Nouveau Brunswick. I'm the associate dean of medicine at Sherbrooke and the coordinator of the Francophone Medical Formation Program as well. And I'm the associate dean of the University of Moncton.
So I'll be doing my presentation in English, but with a French accent, so it will be a bit of both. So anytime afterwards, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them in French or English. And I might, during the presentation, say some French words if I'm not exactly sure how to translate them in English. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Hopefully this works. It did seem to work when I tried it a few minutes ago. And this, I think it's this one here. I think everybody can see it. Okay, so presentation here. Okay, so presentation is going to be on for the retention and recruitment and retention of the graduates at the Centre de Formation Médicale. Before I go along, I'd like to thank Marc-André Bouchard and Jeff Godet, who work at the MSSU, which for their support. They handle all the data and answer all the questions I can have on a regular basis using the information and the data. So I think just like this. Okay. So my role is as associate dean at University of Sherbrooke School of Medicine. Just I have to move this. I can see. And the director of the Centre de Formation, coordinator of Francophone Medical Education Program. I'm responsible for all the quality, the program, its budgets, its outcomes. And really our mandate is really a social responsible mandate to train people, physicians, to meet the needs of our community. So it's important to do the tracking of that, to make sure that we meet the needs of our communities. If we go back history, I'm going to start pretty far back in the early 1960s, the Hall Commission, the Royal Commission on Healthcare Services. It was mandated by John Diefenbaker. Many important information came out of that. That's from that commission that we finally had the global national healthcare program. Before that, it was still people paid. There was private medical services. After the commission, it became the global Medicare as we know it, free health services for everybody across Canada. Also, important from that commission, it was recommended that 4 new medical schools be put in place. 3 of those have been put in place: the Memorial in Newfoundland, Sherbrooke in Quebec, and one out west to meet the needs there. The 4th one's supposed to be in New Brunswick. So, among other things, the recommendations was to meet for the francophones outside New Brunswick, outside Quebec, and for the people of the province of New Brunswick, which had very less manpower, physicians and other parts of the country. But in New Brunswick, instead of having a medical school, it was decided to have a study, see what was needed. So after studies, it was decided not to have a medical school, but to purchase seats with other medical schools. So there was, from that time, there was an agreement for Anglophone education to have agreements with Dalhousie and Memorial, and for the Francophone physician training, it was with Quebec, so with the 3 medical schools. So if you look a little bit at the history, 1967 was the New Brunswick negotiating agreement with the 3 Francophone medical schools, so the Quebec New Brunswick agreement. And it's really all the data bank we have and the information we'll be sharing is really from people, from students that have gone through the Quebec New Brunswick agreement. In 1981, that part, there was the Programme de Formation Médicale Francophone du New Brunswick was established in Moncton. So it's after the first, at that point, it was 13, 14 years since the agreement had started. And most of the students going to Quebec to study to be physicians were not coming back to the province. So we felt that we needed some training in the province to be able to have a better recruitment and retention for the physicians. In 1999, at that point, we had grown the program. We were able to have the whole 24 months of the family medicine training program in New Brunswick for family physicians. So it was affiliated with the University of Sherbrooke. So at that point, people trained as family doctor could do all the training in the province without having to leave. In 2006, we had a regional medical campus established in Moncton with Université de Sherbrooke, the Centre de Formation Médicale. So it was, at that time, Sherbrooke expanded to 2 sites. They expanded a regional medical campus here in Moncton and a regional medical campus in Saguenay area, Chicoutimi, with the same thing. So they were expanding their program with 2 regional medical campuses. There's still a limited number of places still reserved for each year with Laval and University of Montreal. So currently what we have 30 seats with the Quebec Brunswick Agreement. 24 of those are with Sherbrooke that come to the Centre de Formation Médicale in Moncton. 3 go Laval, 3 go Montreal. So why is it important to track the students? The government of Brunswick invests a lot of taxpayers' money. So what is the return on investment? So it's important to show that is it really helping? There's a major workforce shortage everywhere in the country and almost around the world. So provinces that train the physicians, they want to keep them. So it's harder to get the physicians that are trained elsewhere. So it's important to train physicians locally through our program. It's the main source of physician resources or recruitment in that area. So I've been interested in recruitment retention for some time now. So the first publication I had on the topic was in 2011. So it's called improving the recruitment and retention of doctors by training medical students locally. So at that time, we want to look at all the data from the Quebec New Brunswick Agreement up until 2005, before we had a regional medical campus here in New Brunswick. So see, that impact of the regional medical campus would have an impact on the recruitment and training of physicians, retention and recruitment of physicians. So in this first study, what was the major highlights is there was greater exposure to New Brunswick during medical training is associated with significant better odds so that doctors will be recruited and retained in the province. Some effects were perceived for the exposure during both the undergraduate, but mostly the postgraduate programs. So look here, I'm going to switch slides here and go further to the end and come back to the slide in a second here. So just before, so I'm not sure what everybody knows about medical education. So this is what has to be done for training be a physician. So first of all, to be part of the Quebec New Brunswick Agreement, you must be a resident of New Brunswick to be eligible. So that is there's still has been a lot of work on that, because what is considered a resident of New Brunswick. So there's been some definitions and work with the University of Moncton, different universities, and with the post-secondary education to make sure to clarify what is an eligible resident of the province. Sherbrooke and our program here use a fast track program. So 80% of our students come from the 2-year pre-med program through University of Moncton. So a lot of universities, people to go into medicine need to have completed a bachelor's degree, or some places even masters and PhDs are more, it gives you a better chance to come into the medical program. With Sherbrooke and the Centre de Formation, 80% of our students have done are admitted through the 2-year pre-med program. The other 20% have university degrees, bachelor's, master's degree, PhD, or even have been on the workforce and coming back. The admissions process is quite standardized. So there's criteria according to the marks people have, and it's quoted. I think it's on a 40 basics points. It's all standardized. Then there's an MP, which is a short interview. It's all kinds of different stations to measure the candidates' attitudes, to make sure they have the right atmosphere, attitude, or they're good to deal with people, and they be appropriate personalities to be in the medical field. So the 2 scores are put together and gives a ranking, and the top 30 are offered positions in the medical program. So, which is it was done here at the Centre de Formation Médicale. So there's 24 come here, 3 in Laval, 3 in Montreal, and that's called the medical program or the undergrad program. So in the different research, we're talking about undergraduate and postgrad. So they do 4-year programs. They have their series of exams and stuff they have to pass and qualify to be considered MDs. After that, they go through the CARMS process, which is a Canadian residency matching system, which is national system. So they apply and get accepted in a residency program according to how they rank and how the programs rank them. So post-grad training, we have 2 programs in the province. It's all done. Family medicine, it can do, we have up to 16, up to 18 are accredited positions per year. It's a 2-year program in the province through the UMF Dieppe, which is the main, the core program. And they have training all through programs. And psychiatry, we just started in Moncton. It's a 5-year program. So we're just they're finishing the 2nd year of the program. Next year, we're entering the 3rd year. So it takes 5 years to complete that program. So we don't have any physicians that have completed their specialty in psychiatry yet, but we're hoping to have same kind of results. And the rest of the go elsewhere, either family physician or specialty training, which has to be done outside of the province. So just to give you a little brief of the system, then I'll come back to where I was. I hope that. So after our first research, what showed is year 3 and 4 highlighted. So there was about 3.7 people who did do training in the province versus those who didn't. There was about 3.7 times more likely to return practice in province. For specialty, it was 2.8 in year 3 and only 1, so not much different significance. And those were not statistically significant for specialties. Look at postgrad. So postgrad training, there was a big difference. So for if you had done your residency training in the province versus no exposure in the province, the difference was quite significant. 5.9 and up to well, roughly 6, and for specialty was 3.2. So there's much more chance of returning to province if you did some of your residency training in the province versus none at all. So 10 years after the Centre de Formation was started in 2006, so we want to see again, what was the impact? Was there any significant difference between recruitment and retention with the Centre de Formation being put in place? So we know all the 24 students did their whole 4 years undergrad program in New Brunswick versus the other ones that did outside. So we compared to several groups. So we compared to, and we were able to track 456 students in our data bank from the Quebec New Brunswick Agreement, which dated back to 1973. So we were able to look at numbers for ones that trained in Sherbrooke from 73 to 2005. So those were people from New Brunswick doing the same program, but doing all the training in Quebec compared to being a training in the province. And people from Laval and Montreal, which were still doing their training all in Quebec, versus compared to what the results of the ones who did all their training in the Centre de Formation got. So at that time was 10 years after the program started, but you have to remember a lot of people were just finishing because they had done their 4 years, 2 years in family medicine. So there was more candidates who had completed their training in family medicine than there was in specialty. Only 15 had completed their 4 years plus their 6 years of specialty and were started practicing. So at that point, one of the important things we could see is like people who had done their studies in Sherbrooke before the program was delocalized in Brunswick, it was only 40%, and the specialists came back. So we know that those will not, there won't be any more students from New Brunswick studying Sherbrooke. So we know those are the studies. And family medicine was 78%. So, and we looked at compared to the other groups too, but this number is important to, is 40, just 40%. If we looked at locations of practice for New Brunswick graduates, all combined, that combined the ones from Sherbrooke before 2005 and the ones from Montreal and Laval. For family medicine, it was 63% are coming to work in the province. So those are students that did all their training in Quebec 63 came back. The ones in specialties, all the universities combined, is 43%. So the specialists, less than 50% come back to practice in the Brunswick. This is with the data bank. We get this every year. We have an annual report that comes out, and we're always able to update to with the latest year where the people are practicing. So what we have from 2006, well, actually to 2020. The 2020-21 students will just be coming out late June. We've had 557 students have been able to complete their entire MD program. 257, 63% are females, 54% come from rural areas, 46 in urban areas. So it's a little bit more rural, our students. Family physicians were a big part. 65% of them have gone into family physician in all the different specialties. Internal medicine is the next one after that. If we look at the location of practice, family, just I have to move this here, so as you can see. Okay, so family physicians and specialists trained in the province. So the ones that have been trained at the Centre de Formation, we have 85.7 updated to the last data from October 2020 updated. So about 86% of the family, those who went to family physicians are working in the province, and about 54% right now are of the specialists are working in the province. So it compared to it was 78, the ones who hadn't done their training outside of New Brunswick, and 43. So it's better to the ones that are doing the training have done the undergrad program in the province. If we look at the location of practice of all the candidates put together, so so far there was 257, but of those, a lot of them are still doing their residency training program. So those are the ones that are in practice. So we've got 74% of all of the physicians, so that's family physicians and specialists combined together. So about 75% are working in the province, 17% Quebec, because some in Ontario, Nova Scotia, a little bit everywhere. I want to look at different specialties, so we can, with the data bank, we can look at all different parameters and different things. So we want to look at different specialties have been trained of the students that were trained in New Brunswick, where they went for specialties and if they came back to the province. If we look at psychiatry, there's only 4 of them had completed their specialty, that had done their training in their undergrad in New Brunswick, and only 1 of them had come to practice in the province. So it's only 25% retention. Obstetrics we see was 3%. It's 100%, 3 out of 3. So that's much better. Some of the data, physicians change location, so we get the data pretty much updated, but then they can move by the time we get the updated, because we don't look at all of the 450 students or graduates every year to make sure we have exact location, and just every so often we make we go and check them all out again, make sure we have all the correct data. So location of practice in the last 5 years. So if you look at the last 5 years, family physicians in the data, combined data, 2016 was 86% of the family physicians were practicing in the province. 5 years later, when we look at the data, it's 85.7. So it hasn't changed very much, a slight decrease. The specialty was 70%. And even when we looked at the first data we had, it was 80% in return in the first 15 specialists. So, but we knew it was higher and it was going to not stay that high. So now it's gone down from the last 5 years from 70 to 54.3%. So the specialists have increasingly stayed in Quebec. So they're now at 36% of the residents had gone to Quebec, and it was only 14 in 2016. And Ontario has gone up to 7.9 compared to 0. So it's quite an increase in the last 5 years of our specialists don't seem to be coming back. So there's definitely, when look at that, we know that's one of the things we're trying to work out. How can we find ways to get them the specialists come back and keep track of them more so we can guarantee that they come back in the province. If we look just location last 2 years, there's been 26 graduates in family medicine, 18 in specialty. But the ones in family physicians, there's 92.3 are working in the province. So those last 2 years, it seems that it worked really well for recruitment, retention for family physicians. I'll be looking at this. I'll be sharing this document again in a few minutes, sir. So if we look at different areas of origin of practice, so we look at the zone 1, there's been 62 of the students in their centre de formation médicale since 2006 have done the program and completed our in practice. There's those are the ones practicing family physician medicine. There's 61 and there's about 20 in specialty. So of the 62 originating from the province, we have much more. So some of the special, the ones training that are originating from other zones have come to practice in the Moncton area. But if you look at the total of the number of students from zone 4, 5, and 6, there's more students that originate from the north than originate from the Moncton area or the south that have been in our teaching program. Here's another way of showing the data. So this is their place of birth from north, south, or outside. So there've been quite a bit more that come from the north. Of those, 36 have gone to work in the north. 32 of those have come to work in the south, and 17 have gone to practice outside of the province. The ones that are originating from the southern part of the province, 48% of those students are still practicing in the south. 8 have gone up practice up north, and 19 have left the province. So among the ones working the southern part of the province, 64% are working Vitality, but 36% are working Horizon. So it's still good because our students are bilingual, so they can work either in Vitality or Horizon, which they go and meet the needs of the communities or Francophone population in the Horizon. But Vitality, if you look at that, they're losing some of their students going to Horizon. The students that are trained that are originating from the north have 7 times more likely to go return practice in the north than those from the south. So we know if we need to have more physicians in the north, it's better to have physicians that are coming from the north to go return in the north. 73% of the graduates are practicing urban areas and 26%. And if we looked at the data, we knew that about 54% were originally from rural areas. So, but their place of practice, 73% are in more urban areas. Results, completing medical education program training in the Brunswick increases the likelihood of graduates practicing in the province. Family physicians are generally more likely to practice in Brunswick than specialists. The zone 1 tends to retain graduates who are from this zone originally and attract many of the ones that are originally from the northern part of the province. But I think we see that an urban urbanization, and we see that thing in the demographics of the provinces. A lot of people from northern areas are moving to the southern areas of the province. What do we know? So we know that training in the province versus no exposure for family physicians, it's almost 6 times more chance of returning to practice in New Brunswick if you've had some exposure or their training in New Brunswick versus not any exposure at all. Specialists at about 3.2 times more likely to return to province. Francophone family medicine training program retention rates between 85 and 90%. People originating from the northern part of the province are 7 times more likely to return practice in the same area, to return in the northern part of the province. We know specialists trained in Quebec with no exposure in the province had about 40% chance of return. Those who complete their undergrad training in New Brunswick show higher rates of return. At first it was quite high, but now it's more around 55%. I think it was 54% the last numbers we have. So what is influencing this and what can we do. So we know we have some work to do in trying to retain and create the retention of our specialists. So what can we do? We can train more physicians in the province. We have the capacity. We could probably take up to 8 more students in our Centre de Formation Médicale. Can influence where students come from. And we select more candidates from the north. We already have more from the north than from the south. Is that something we should be looking at, try to increase that more? Have more special training in the province. We're looking at with psychiatry, which had a very low return or retention and recruitment. So we're hoping with the psychiatry program, all 5 years in the program in the province, that there'll be much higher returns. Find ways to create stronger relationship with those studying in specialty outside the province. So we have to find ways to attract them back. Just that's a small, what I showed you before. The admission process is quite rigid. So how can we influence their admission process? With the diversity and inclusion policies of all faculties of medicine across the province, and in our accreditation criteria, there is social responsibility mandate. So some specific populations, identified populations, have it is possible to adjust some score. We know for First Nations, Indigenous peoples, some universities will put a +1 on the mark, or put a national additional incentive or point system to help them enter the very competitive process of admission process. Some provinces have other minorities that have to put them extra points to try to adjust the system so they can more easily come in the system. Those students normally will need a pipeline or support system during their undergrad program, but there is something are being done across the country to help encourage or recruit or admit people that are in minority groups, or to help minority groups to have more physicians from those communities. How we have an influence on where they do their specialty training. There's a COMS match, is quite rigid system, but we're working with Quebec, and I think I saw Jake on the one of the people who joined the conference. Jake has done some work with the Quebec government to try to have seats or a special contingency for New Brunswick physicians, trained MDs, to be able to come into certain specialties that we need more in the province. We know if people go and do a very specialized specialty, they go in pediatric nephrology, for example, there's none in the province. So it's impossible for them to return in the province. So just also a few other examples of the use of our data bank. We all kinds of types of questions. We can have that from health department, from post-secondary education, or even from Vitalities, to look in the data bank for specific questions. So this is an example of a question we had. Would you be able to provide me the overall retention rate of the Centre de Formation Médicale and the breakdown for family medicine and specialties, if possible, by the end of the day? And that's normally the types of questions we have. And would you get the average distribution between family medicines and specialties? And then a few minutes later, I had another email from the same person. How about the total average since 2016 for all graduates, family medicine and specialties, and the last 2 years for the same all graduates, family? So that's, of course, there was a thank you at the end. So this is just one of the slides I showed earlier. Some of the data we got for direct answers to a specific question from the health Department of Health. So there's been 26 family of the graduates went to family medicine, and 18 specialties in the last 2 years. And of those, 90 family medicine, 92.3 are in our practice in the province. So that's a little bit of summary